This podcast was recorded during the holiday season and centers around grief, a deeply personal and unique journey for everyone. My friend Giselle shares her experience of losing her daughter, who was a supermom, to two, and we discuss themes of grief and loss and coping with cancer. While her story may not mirror your own, it does serve as a reminder that grief looks differently for everyone. What Giselle needed during her loss might not work for someone that you're supporting through theirs. The best thing you can do is have a conversation to figure out how they cope, and then figure out the best way to help. This conversation touches on sensitive topics. Please listen with care. Welcome back to Exhausted Sparrows Unite, the podcast where we embrace life's messiness. We let go of perfection and we focus on what truly matters. In today's episode, we are going to dive deep into loss. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, a dream, a sense of normalcy, grief affects us all in different ways. And yet when someone we care about is struggling, we often don't know what to do. Or worse, we ask the wrong questions, if any questions at all. This episode, I am here with my beautiful friend Giselle, who lost her daughter to cancer recently. And we want to talk about breaking through the hesitation and finding the courage to simply help. It's a lot, Giselle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is. I've certainly been finding words for me sometimes is incredibly difficult. And I know that filling the void is something I've always tried to do when it gets really quiet.
So let's talk about this. For those that don't know, Sparrow's Nest, the reason for this podcast really centers around the charity. Mm-hmm. Charity is here in the Hudson Valley, which is located in New York, and we feed families that are facing a cancer diagnosis. A few years ago, Giselle and her beautiful daughter, Sheena, children all came into her life. And let's talk about a little bit about Sheena, the diagnosis, mm-hmm. and then let's get into how in the world do people help you?
Do you do that? So at the age of 39, she was having a few little symptoms that the doctor didn't think was a very big deal. So she needed a colonoscopy, but it was during COVID. And again, the doctor said, it's probably internal hemorrhoids, not that big a deal. Schedule it when you can. So life, she was a social worker, mom of two very busy girls. Life is going pretty crazy. So she's forgetting about this, that, and the other thing until she gets around to it, maybe 6 months later. And ends up with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, colorectal cancer.
How old was she?
39. No reason to believe it was anything more than those nagging internal hemorrhoids.
Mm-hmm. So she went to the doctors. She was diagnosed.
Yep.
We came into your life. How long after that?
I'm going to guess 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. Yeah, somewhere around there.
She was going to the doctor. She was doing her chemo, radiation, surgeries.
She had a lot on her plate going on. The triple threat chemo that they started her with, and then it was radiation, and it was surgery, and it was blood clots in between, and hospitalizations for every fever that went over 101, which were frequent. We were running around like crazy people all the time.
And she, through her diagnosis, she was working through the whole thing because, she was single mom. I mean, dating, had a great guy, but, still single mom, and ex-husband still in the picture. Yep. But again, she was juggling a lot of this, and you and your husband were, trying to help her juggle it all.
Right. Because we knew going to work was important to make her feel like she was still contributing. And it gave her a reason to get up in the morning and not focus on herself so much. And that for her was very important.
And then we had this great news at some point, right? We were running.
Oh yeah.
We were doing a run in Clearwater, and the hurricane hit. We couldn't go to Clearwater. For those of you that are a little confused about what all this means, we here at Sparrow's Nest have a team of people every year that go to these great destinations. They raise a pile of money, and it was something that Giselle decided she was going to do for her daughter. She, got involved in this. So we were going to go to Clearwater. This hurricane hits, and right around that time, you give me what was good news.
Right. We thought she was all clear. We got the letter. No evidence of disease.
And we were just saying, wow.
Ecstatic. We couldn't believe, with all the things that she'd gone through, stage 4, oh my gosh, I think we dodged a bullet.
But then by the time we did this run, we had to turn around and do the run locally. We have a rail trail here. It's beautiful. So we're like, let's go ahead. Let's still do the run. It was raining outside. We were getting the rain from the hurricane. And, we were like, we're still doing it. So we did this run, but the news had changed at that time.
Right, because that week, less than 2 months after she'd received this amazing news, we found out the cancer was full on back.
And maybe just really had never left. It just maybe
just kind of was
undetected.
hiding for a minute. That's what I'm thinking. It was just, it gave us a minute, which we appreciated. But wow, that felt almost worse than the first time we heard the diagnosis.
Yeah. And I noticed with you, everything about you changed. And so I knew we were in a very serious position. I knew, because you're a lot like me, you were very matter of fact. You were trying to keep the emotion out of it. And, you were saying, okay, if or when, or, I need to get this in place in case, so I knew there was some words, which I try to pay attention to, that you were saying that made me say, okay, we are in a very serious situation.
Yeah, it got to the point where weeks could go by and she wouldn't hear from the doctors who had promised to put together some sort of regimen that was supposed to be, hopefully was going to help, but no one was calling back. And she was feeling so forgotten and so abandoned. And that was a tough time.
It was.
Yeah, because what they should have said, the professionals at the time, was sat us down and to tell us how serious this was, in the way that there probably wouldn't be a treatment that was going to help for any significant amount of time.
Sure. And who wants to tell you that, right?
It's tough.
It's awful.
But here's what happened. When she called one of her physicians to set up an appointment, she was told by the receptionist or whoever took the call, oh, we're canceling your appointment. We don't see the need for you to come back at this point in time.
Right.
That was a sucker punch to the gut.
And you knew, and she knew, what was going on. And
Right.
she fought for another, how many months?
She fought, that would have been the spring of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So she died January of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So about 9 months.
And during that time, you're a great mom. First of all, you're a great mom. You're trying to help her. You're juggling the grandkids and trying to make some normalcy for them. And there's so much going on. But, the reason I wanted to do this podcast with you is because so many of us, when there is a loss, we want to help, but we don't
know
and what is it that we say, and what do you want people to know when you suffer this insurmountable loss?
Right.
What do you need?
When you're in the middle of something like this, your brain compartmentalizes, like it puts things in boxes. Okay, so we know we need groceries because we're going to have to make dinner, and we know we got to get laundry done because the kids need clean clothes for tomorrow. And you have all these mental checklists in your head. At least I do. I have a million of them every day. And plenty of people had during that time would say, call me if you need some help. I can absolutely be there. Just call me. And in all honesty, in my head, I was already saying, that's nice, but I'm not going to call you.
Right.
And the reason I'm not going to call you is because when things shift on a dime, because I can be having my day, having planned out the day, all the chores and the tasks, and then I get a call, Mom, I've got a fever, got to go back to the hospital. That you drop everything and you run to do, of course, to put out the biggest fire. In that moment, when I still had a laundry list of things to be done, the only thing in my head is getting my daughter to the hospital to make sure she's getting treatment so she doesn't get sicker. Mm-hmm. Those other things get left because it's not important right now, but they still need to be done.
So I think, right, this is like an obligatory comment that we all make, like, whatever you need, just call me.
Right.
But really what you're saying, and it is good for me to hear, is, you're saying, I can't even think of what I need. And if I have to think about this, it's too late. So like, just come over, just take my grandchildren, just clean my floor, just drop off groceries.
Yep.
You can't do anything like that is going to upset me. It can only help me.
Right. And I know that I used to get really caught up in that. Well, it has to be just the right meal. Well, what if I make this and I find out they don't like that? That would be so terrible. Well, there's way more terrible things. I when all of this happened, because I was raised as a perfectionist, which is exhausting and just dumb because it's dumb. Everything always had to be just right. And good enough was never good enough. But guess what? My life now, oh my gosh, so many things are good enough anymore. Where in the past, I would have stressed and made this big fanciful meal for somebody. From soup to nuts, because just bringing over a lasagna would not have been enough because it wasn't an entire meal.
Right.
Now, if I were doing this for someone that I loved and I had a few minutes, I would run to the grocery store, grab a few different cold cuts, a loaf of bread, some condiments, and just bring the whole thing over and throw it in their fridge.
They just need something to eat.
Sometimes it's that simple. Most of the time it's that simple, but we get caught up with doing it just right.
Sure. And we get caught up waiting on you to give us a cue.
Exactly.
And you can't wait on the cue.
We don't want to interrupt. Oh, what if I call and she's taking a nap?
Yeah.
What if I've gotten that a lot with, well, I didn't want to disturb you. I wasn't sure if you'd be busy. So what I say to people is, please just continue to call. If I can't talk, I won't pick up the phone. I'll call you back at some point. But if I can talk, I'm going to love that interruption. Because maybe I'm in the mess of a mental breakdown in my head. I'm missing my kids so much I can't even talk out loud to myself like I do all day. And sometimes a call like that comes in, it's enough to jolt me out and remember there are people around me who love me. And I know that. But sometimes you just can't get out of your own way. And all you need is like someone to clap in front of you to snap you out of it.
What we realized at the charity, we feed people that have a cancer diagnosis. We give them 2 meals every week. What we noticed and what I really realized early on is, oh my goodness, there are many cases, 85%, where they will go into remission, be cured, no sign of disease. But there is this group that does not. And what I realized really early on is, first, everybody is on you when this loss takes place. Yeah. And then, of course, it's human nature. They go back to their own lives a month later. So one of the things very early on I said to my board of directors is, hey, listen, we are not going to leave this family alone. We are going to take another year. We're going to make sure they're fed, because I think that is something that we need to impress on others. If you have a friend, a loved one, somebody that's going through a loss, that first month, you're overwhelmed with love.
Oh, everybody's there.
But you need that more than that first month. And I try really hard. Like it sounds impersonal, but I don't mean it to be. But for me, I'm really busy. So in my calendar, I literally will write alarms and I will make sure once a week that I'm calling this person or texting this person, or because you need that for the rest of your lives. You need somebody to check in.
Because your world becomes very small. All of a sudden, the social life that you had, because you were doing this, and that, and you had this plan and that plan, and people all around you doing things that you all had in common. Well, that stops instantly. Of course, people's lives go on, which I completely understand. But our lives got so incredibly tiny and lonely because people didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I get that. I've been in that position. I've been guilty of not showing up because I've been embarrassed about not having the right words. It is uncomfortable because we're not a society that talks about death and the transition and what it does to a family.
And everybody grieves differently.
Everyone does it different. Some people are in the closet. Some people want to be out there with a million people with them. And some people sometimes you just don't know what you need until it walks right in front of you. And sometimes all it takes is a smile from a stranger to make you fall apart in a store that you didn't expect to. But then having that kindness just lift you up when you think you can't even get up to walk out of the store.
And that's what we need to know,
and
right?
we don't even need words. I think we've talked about this before where, for me, I'm sorry for your loss. It's probably the worst phrase on the planet for me.
That's a trigger, sure.
It is, because especially if it's coming from someone who knows me or who knew my child, I need to hear her name. I need maybe a touch on the arm or on my hand with just a look that, of course, you feel bad, but it needs to be a more personal way of exuding that.
Yeah. And I think those of us, right, that are on the outside looking in, we trip ourselves up, right?
Yeah.
We make up these scenarios in our head about, how, oh my gosh, I can't say this and I can't say that. And listen, there are things, everybody's different. There are things that you are going to say. I said something a couple of weeks ago to someone and they did not receive it well. And you have to give yourself grace too, right? Because
you're trying.
You're trying. And if somebody, is upset with the way that you say something, you mark it down. You put it in the back of your mind and say, well, this doesn't work for them. I'm going to come at it a different way.
Right.
But, come at it
Don't
because
be afraid of it.
They need to see and they need to feel that they are loved and that the life that they have lost mattered.
And it's also what I never thought about before until it happened to us was it isn't that you lose the person you love so much also. It's also that the life you thought you were going to have is gone. It completely changes, at least in our, it did for us. And I had to learn that it was okay to grieve that because everything just changed so much.
Well, you had felt something the last 40 years of your life. Your daughter has been there. She has been in it.
Right.
So you're just
going along with the usual, when we retire, we'll do this and we'll do that. And sometimes you can't even explain why you feel the way you feel when you're in the middle of all that, aside from the being mad and being sad and being frustrated and, all of it. And
a lot of times because you're the caregiver, right? You it's kind of fight or flight. So you're just fighting. You're not dealing with your own emotions in it because you just know that you have to get your daughter through the day. And you're saying, we're going to be okay. You're worried about your grandchildren, your son, your husband. And sometimes too, after that loss hits, like the emotions that come behind that are just huge and heavy.
Yeah. And they come at you when you least expect them.
And I think one of our other families, she was talking to me and she said, we're coming, up. We passed a year of, her passing and Christmas and all this. And she said, and I thought maybe the first year was going to be the hardest. And she said, I don't know why I'm so sad. And I said, Jen, every day can be hard.
Yeah.
Like, I think some people think, well, if you can get through the first year, but I mean, every day can be hard. Anything, like you said, being in the middle of a grocery store and I don't know, seeing an orange.
Right. Or what tripped me off was I was trying to pick out the best Easter basket for my granddaughter. And all I could think of was, well, which one would she get her?
Mm.
And when I saw one that I thought she'd get for her, if she were the one picking out her Easter basket, all I had to do was look at it, and I fell into a puddle on the floor in Adams Fairacre Farms. I mean, the sobbing, the whole of it, and I was embarrassed, but I couldn't budge. But through the kindness of a worker there who saw me, who came over with a box of tissues and sat on the floor with me and really didn't say anything. She brought me this little stuffed bunny when I spilled out what, my angst and my sadness, it all just spilled. And she came up with this little stuffed bunny to give my granddaughter and just sat with me quiet until I could calm down. And it was incredible what that did for me.
I say it all the time. We hear it all the time. You don't know what somebody, and you don't know what somebody's walking through. Right. Right?
Right.
And that's what this podcast is really all about. It is, you need to be able to show the messiness. You shouldn't be covering that up, trying to make it prettier than it is, because it can be downright ugly.
Yeah. And I know that I was always, if I'd walk by somebody who knew me in a store or something, and of course they'd say, "Oh, how are you?" And you give out the usual, "Oh, I'm all right. I'm good." When I was anything like good. And I said to myself when I says, "Why do I do that?" Because if I say I'm fine when I'm not fine to people who are actually asking, then they deserve to be told if I'm really not fine, to give them the option if they want to, get closer with that or not.
And I think, though, that's a good point that you bring up. I had someone else in here and we were talking about that. And she said, her trigger is, "How are you?"
Yeah.
And the reason it is because she's like, that is something you just say. Yep. So do you really want to know? So that is something that I've been trying very, very hard over the past few months to, when I say it, I'm really looking at you, and you know what? I'm not passing you.
Right.
I need to make sure I've got the time to ask it, because I need to make sure that I have the time to listen to the reply.
Right.
And I'm trying to be very, very careful with my words and make my words count, because I say it all the time. I have a shirt that says, "I'm fine, it's all fine." Like, like I have that Dory, bang, like that thing. I've got that shirt because same.
Right.
But maybe that's what we, if you don't get anything else out of the podcast, maybe it is as simple as you saying, "How are you?" But take the 5 minutes, make sure you have it if you're going to ask it.
If you're going to really understand that you need to want to know what the answer is.
Yeah. And we don't want to know. How many times you say, "How are you?" in a day? Like, as you're walking by someone, they don't have any other choice but to say, "I'm fine."
Right.
Or, life sucks. And you're still walking, even if that's what they say. So, getting that time to really just invest 5 minutes in a person.
Yeah.
And for me, I started this thing where I compliment 5 strangers a day. So in my journey, and they don't have to be strangers, they could be people, work, whatever, but I make it a point that there's at least 5 people that I say, this shirt looks nice on you, oh, I love your hair,
Right.
whatever that may be. And I'm hoping that out of the 5 people I say something to every day, that if I ever run across a Giselle that is in the middle of a struggle, I'm just hoping that I say something kind when they're really just fighting to have gotten up that morning.
Yeah.
And I think if we all just did that, just said a couple sweet things to a stranger, because we're all fighting.
Everybody's got something.
Something.
Absolutely. And it's not a contest, by the way, people who will start. Here's another thing that we all need to stop doing is also I'll have someone say, oh, I'm having a hard day today because of, my car broke down in the middle of running to work and it was a really rough day. Oh, but I don't mean to say that my day is worse than yours. My days could never be worse than yours. Like, stop.
You're having a bad day.
You're having a crappy day. It's okay. I don't have the rights to every bad day on the planet because I lost my daughter.
And right, there's this
and
comparison.
It's relative to what you're going through at the time.
Sure.
If you needed to be at a meeting that was going to cost you a promotion and you were late because you got a flat tire, it's a real sucky day, no doubt.
I run across that with recipients a lot.
Yeah.
That will say, you don't need to feed me. It's only stage 1.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? I only need surgery. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Because we are taught that there's somebody that, there's somebody that is always going to have it worse than us.
Yeah.
And there's somebody that's always going to have it better.
Yeah.
So just be in the moment. Take 5 minutes to go, today stinks.
Yeah.
Get out of it and move on. And don't feel guilty. There are plenty of people that are going through, of course, many, many things. But you have a right to embrace your own suckiness.
Absolutely.
Embrace the suck. Can I say that? Am I
You
okay?
can say that. You're
Okay.
absolutely fine.
I can say that. Yeah. Embrace it and move on. But I just think it's important, if you're listening and you've got somebody you love that is going through loss, to do something.
Yep.
Doing nothing is the worst thing you can do, or asking that person
what
to tell
can
you
I do
what
for you when their plate is so full already. They don't know what they need.
they don't.
Or again, if you're asking, I needed this 20 minutes ago, if you had just maybe walked into my house with a cup of coffee because my coffee maker broke down again, and damn it.
If I drank coffee, I would have given you coffee. I would have brought you a soda pop. But that's the stuff that we need to know.
A Diet Coke always did it for me for a long time.
Now I know Giselle likes Diet Coke if anybody would like to bring some to Sparrow's Nest. But that's it, right? And we're not, this podcast is not to make anybody feel guilty.
No, it's actually to alleviate the guilt that we feel when we feel we're not doing enough for someone. And I'm here to say every little bit helps. Things that you think are so small could mean the world to me tomorrow if I'm having a day that I just can't get out of. Nothing is too small. A smile goes a long way. A hug goes a huge way. And just, it's a way for you to let someone know how much you really care when at that moment, maybe they need to know. I've been lucky enough to come home with some of these meals with a little note that says, "You've got this, you are loved." That one put me on the floor. I won't lie. I was a puddle, but I was a grateful crier that day.
Giselle is talking about with our meals. We have an entire community that just wants to do amazing things. So a lot of times, especially when it comes to children wanting to help us, I will have classes in here and stuff, and I'll say, listen, just write a note.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we stick the notes on the meals because, wow, that's powerful that a stranger is saying, I don't even know you.
Yeah.
And I'm still behind you and I still support you.
And that was, for me that day, I was having a rough day that day. And when I saw that someone said that I was loved, even though it was just this tiny little note from someone I didn't know, it soared me. It let me do the things I needed to do that day.
I want to thank you so much for coming in, because I know that this is hard, but this is so necessary.
It really is.
It really is.
Thanks for having me, Krista.
I love you, my friends. I love you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Exhausted Sparrows Unite. If there's one thing to take away from this conversation, I hope it is this. Do not wait to be asked in the middle of a loss. Just show up. Be there, whether it's a meal, it's a hug, or you simply just sit in silence with somebody. Your actions speak louder than any question ever could. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody that, I don't know, they might be struggling today. As always, please don't forget to subscribe. You can leave us a review. You can tell us what you want to hear about, because this is all about messiness. This is about unfilteredness. This is probably not your average podcast, because I don't want to be average. I just want to be messy, and I want to be honest, and I want to be humble, and I want to be transparent. And I want you to see that me and all the women and men that I love that come on the show, we do not have it all together. So just learn to focus on everything that truly matters. And it really is you. So until next time, let's take care of each other.